Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we're twin brothers here to bring you what's new and nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we say, of course, reality is beyond our own. What is your guilty pleasure drink?
Like something that I would be not not open to sharing with somebody. Like, oh yeah, I drink this. Yeah. I guess that kind of defines guilty pleasure, doesn't it? Wow, Nathan, you're good at defining words. Okay.
Killing it, buddy.
Oh gosh, it's gotta be a sweet drink. I really enjoy blended things like daiquiris, margaritas, pina coladas. I love those things. And it's like, I don't drink them very often because it's not necessarily a guilty pleasure because I'm worried that people will think lower of me. People can go, like, to be honest, like frick themselves with what they consider to be drinkable, because some people drink Bud Light and some people drink straight whiskey and then they pretend that they like it and it puts hair on their chest. I actually do like some whiskey, but I will admit that some of it is just straight garbage. So keep that in mind. But I do find it a guilty pleasure because it has so much sugar in it. I really try not to drink too much sugar. So,
oh, dude, I could drink a gallon of Mai Tais, but that's not my guilty pleasure drink. Something that I legitimately am embarrassed to buy at either work or the grocery store, because we have like vending machines at work and stuff. Monster Energy. The original flavor.
Yeah, I actually like that. Last time I visited you, I bought myself a Monster Energy drink because I knew no one was going to be in the car with me to see me drink it. And I was like, I knew if I bought one and my wife was around, she would be like, yeah, you're buying that? That's not what my wife sounds like. She doesn't sound like a valley girl. It's okay. She might not see that later. Although she might see that on an Instagram. Crap. I love you, sweetie, so much. Don't make me sleep on the couch. She doesn't do that. Ow. Yeah. But it's revolting to her. So
your mouth
it's one of those things where I'm like,
your mouth has to move as little as possible.
Yeah. It's all in the throat and the tongue. Ow. Okay, let's stop velociraptoring around. Guys, we've got a big one coming your way. We've got a doozy. We're talking about Warhammer 10th edition today, almost exclusively, because the news hammers just keep getting dropped and dropped and dropped, and my balls are getting busted here. We got to talk about this stuff. If you guys haven't found out, make sure you guys watch the new trailers for like the new 10th edition Warhammer. It's super cool. You guys are going to see some really cool stuff, and those actually hint at a lot of the following releases that we've been getting. So if there's anything you don't want spoiled for you, I'm not really sure why you wouldn't. We'll talk about maybe a little bit of lore at the end of the episode, but I think the lore is the fun part. So here's your official spoiler warning. We're talking about Warhammer news. So if you don't want to know about this for some reason now's your chance to bail out. Appreciate you. But make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe if you guys are watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast. Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts are the best places you guys can find us right now. We're going to get right into it. Let's start off with character rules. So I have been digging through so many sources because normally our go-to sources are places like Spiky Bits, Auspex Tactics on YouTube, and those are usually some of the places we go like right away. Like they're going to have clear, concise information on Warhammer updates. Everyone and their mom is posting Warhammer updates right now. Yeah, go ahead.
And Chapter Master Valrak on YouTube and Twitter, killing it. It's one of my favorites.
Dude's fire. Love you.
Boy,
I love you all. Anyways, we have just gotten some huge updates on characters. One of the biggest ones is actually a mechanic I am hugely a fan of. And if you guys have played the Dawn of War RTS, I don't care if you've played Dawn of War 2 or Dawn of War 3, they're really bad. But if you play Dawn of War 1, you're an OG. I love you, and you will understand this mechanic almost right away. So characters can join units again. I did not play Warhammer when this was first available. So when they were like, hey, this is coming back, I was like, wow, finally. But apparently it was a mechanic they introduced away and are bringing it back. So
I'm totally here for it.
What that means is that auras are actually going to be mostly going away. There's still going to be a few, most likely from like supreme commanders of the armies, but most units are only going to benefit from character upgrades, or not. I keep wanting to say auras, but they're specifically not auras anymore, but they're going to gain the special abilities from these units only when they're attached to the commander. So super excited about that. And that's going to help balance everything a ton, because if you've got a commander sitting in the middle and you've got like 5 units all around them, every single unit is now gaining the effect of that aura, as long as it's within 6, 9, 12 inches, whatever is actually stated on the data sheet. That's really hard to balance, because now half of your army is like, hey, guess what? We get to re-roll a 1 on the hit roll or whatever it might be, right? So your odds of hitting something are now exponentially increased. I shouldn't say exponentially. That is not the correct term. It's more of an incremental increase. Yes, thank you. And that just makes it really hard to balance. And if you guys play Warhammer, one of the biggest issues right now is the game is not balanced. Certain armies suck. Certain armies are really good. And there's not really anything you can do about that unless you have a major point discrepancy, which is not how the game works. So that's going to hopefully help bring that a little bit closer together.
And just to add some clarity, the way Games Workshop balances the game is they look at tournament win percentage, and they act exclusively as that is their primary metric. That is their primary metric to determine whether or not an army is balanced or not. If it gets above, like, I want to say a win rate of 55%, they nerf it into the ground. That's what you see.
That sucks. That's like not that high. Oh man.
I mean, yeah, because they want the games to basically be a coin flip and basically be decided on who is the better strategist, not necessarily who just picks the better units. I mean, that's part of strategies, picking the right units, but they want it to be as close to a coin flip as possible. So on the surface, that makes sense. But with a game as intricate as 40K, and the way they actually roll out some of these nerfs are really frustrating. There's good and bad things. I mean, this is why they're going to 10th edition, is because they're like, hey, we've changed enough of these rules that we just think basically starting over is the way to go. So we're going to see new data sheets for every unit. They're going to, especially for 10th edition, we know everything is going to get a new data sheet because the data sheets themselves are changing. Going back to what you said about auras being gone, this sucks as a Space Marine player. One of the primary strategies...
I'm so sorry, brother.
Oh, frick. Like, I'm already not a very good Space Marine player. Space Marines are mid-tier at best. I play currently the best Space Marine army, statistically, which is the Dark Angels, which they nerfed hard in the recent data slate, which came out yesterday. They took away the inherent transhuman physiology from Deathwing Terminators, which 9th edition Terminators are only T4. They're supposed to be walking tanks. Their armor is called Tactical Dreadnought armor, and for some reason they're T4. It's like, oh, well, they have a 2-up armor save. It's like, well, who cares? Everything has such high AP, it doesn't matter. This is changing in 10th edition. This is one of the things we're going to talk about, and I'm totally getting down the rabbit hole. It's so hard for me to hold back the rant inside of me, because I'm like, there's things that are changing that I think are really good for the game, and other things that are changing that I'm like, what are you doing? What is going on this stupid head? What are you thinking?
To give you guys a little bit of background with like what is going on and like how fast these changes are being rolled out, we're like our Discord servers are like exploding right now. Like we are trying to get this stuff figured out, and we're like strategizing, hey, how's this going to affect my army? How's this going to affect the people I play against most? And then like midway through the conversation, we're like, oh, by the way, something else just dropped. And then we shift focus. Oh, and then something else just dropped. And then we shift focus. So it's been absolutely crazy. 2 abilities I wanted to go over just to give you guys a quick illustration of what's going to be going on here is the abilities of the Primaris Lieutenant. So that's one of the ones they've been featuring. It's a unit and a model that they already have the sculpt for, so you can actually see his sculpt already. Games Workshop has already released that.
One of like
and
a
they
dozen
are in
different
the
lieutenants.
trailer. They have so many lieutenants.
Oh my
so
gosh.
many. But
it's a meme.
Now, when we're talking, it's a meme. When you talk about adding a Primaris lieutenant to, for example, an intercessor squad, that intercessor squad is going to get 2 abilities. It's going to get the lethal hits ability, and it's going to get the target priority ability. And I actually really like both of these. And there's a reason that these are only used on attached squads, because if these were auras, these would be broken, right? So they're like, hey, we want to still have cool abilities. But yeah, it would break everything. Like here's what it is. Lethal hits means that when you do your hit roll, 6s are automatically wound. You do not have to roll those in the wound phase. Yep. You set them aside as automatic wounds. They're going through, which means that the Space Marines are going to get a little bit more shooty. So that's super cool.
Yes.
And to be fair, here's the thing. You play Space Marines. I play Orcs. I play an army that has a garbage, we're talking t-shirt level saves here, unless I am in phase 1 or 2 of the WOT. Even in phase 2, it's a 6-up save. And you still can't, it's not good. And you still have a hard time killing my models. And that's kind of the level that they're at right now. So 6s are going to be automatically wounding. If there's any AP, guess what? That's a dead orc right there. So unless I'm in the WAD, then I get invulnerable saves. So that's going to be really good, especially when me and you are playing. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. The second rule we'll talk about is just target priority. So this means that the squad that is attached to the lieutenant can now shoot and charge, when and after they fall back, which is super tactical. One of the best ways, and this happened to you. You had a unit of Hellblasters that got basically surrounded and were just closed down into melee range. And guess what? The Hellblasters are no good in melee. That's not what they're kitted out to do. And so imagine having a lieutenant with those guys, being able to fall back, fire into that unit, and then recharge them if you needed to. I love this ability because the orcs do really, really good at charging because they have an Here We Go ability, which I don't know if that's going to stay there, so don't quote me on this here, guys, but currently they have the Here We Go ability, which means I get to reroll charges. Orcs are meant to be in melee combat, so that's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah, they're so deadly in melee. So this is huge because that is essentially the Ultramarines chapter tactic. That's why you play Ultramarines, is so you can fall back and shoot. You can be tactical. That's their whole thing, is being the most tactical chapter. So all Marines are going to get that now. So this means we're probably going to see a big change come to the Ultramarines. Rabute Gilliman, who is the Primarch of the Ultramarines, who is back on the tabletop, has been since 8th edition. His datasheet hasn't been updated since 8th edition. So it'll be exciting to see what happens there. I will say, with the aura abilities being taken away, I think this is going to fundamentally change how Space Marines play. Currently, what you would want to do is you would want to run squads of 5, and using the combat squads ability with the Space Marines, break up your guys, allow you to move in many different directions at once. And because you had an aura ability, you don't have to maintain squad coherency to get all these buffs. Well, now that these abilities like lethal hits and target priority are only going to apply to the squad that the HQ is attached to, I think we're going to start seeing bigger squads of Space Marines again. I think we're going to start seeing 10-man blobs of intercessors, which a 10-man squad of intercessors with assault bolt rifles, that is 30 shots of bolt rifle ammo, auto wounding on 6s. That's a lot of firepower. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's going to hurt.
That's good against something like orcs, I should say. That's good against horde types units that are T4 or T3. It'll just shred them to pieces, and that's what it's meant to do. I still wish Space Marines were stronger. They're too expensive, in my opinion, for the amount of points you get. You don't get the damage out of it. A strength 4 weapon is not that powerful. It's just not. So, but anyway,
no,
that's not why we're here.
Yeah, that's going to only give you 50% chance to hit and wound. So yeah, it's not great. So One thing to note about the whole attachment with characters rule is that you need to join like-style units. So, yes. For example, you can't have a Terminator captain join with a Primaris intercessor squad. Like, you would need to join Terminators with Terminators, regular style, or I should say just standard pattern armor with standard pattern armor. And this might even apply to units with Phobos armor and Gravis armor as well. I'm still kind of waiting to hear more about that in the specifics, but you can't just like throw a Terminator captain in like a random squad of guys and just like call it okay. So there is going to be some like style units coming in. There is going to also be some characters that are going to be considered lone operatives. This means the characters are going to be given similar rules to how they operate currently, but it's going to affect things like, for example, let's say the Vindicare Assassin, right? That's not something that would make sense if it was like attached to a squad of Godsmen. You're like, no, the Vindicare Assassin operates alone, and some of those characters are going to still hold on to some of those rules.
Yeah, for sure. So it's going to... I think the goal with 10th edition is not only to make the game faster and easier to understand, but also a little bit more true to the lore of these characters. Like I said, Space Marines, in my opinion, should be way stronger. They're supposed to be gods amongst men. It's like, well, they don't feel like that on the tabletop. I understand you have to have balanced gameplay, but they don't feel like that. Even the Lion, his 9th edition datasheet, which came out, is a little underwhelming. Am I still going to buy him? 100%. 110%. The pre-sale opens tomorrow. I'm going to be irresponsible with my money and buy him. But
do it.
But the lore. Anyway, give me the DL on your favorite looking model so far.
Andrew, give us the down low on your new favorite model. I know it's so...
The Primarch of the First Legion, so the Supreme Commander of the army that I run. My army is actually called the Warbirds, but they are proxying as a Dark Angel's army. The Lion is coming to the tabletop. He is some good things. His melee stats. Oh my gosh. He can... I think he can, statistically, he'll be able to, one-shot any of the other Primarchs in the game. If you don't have a damage cap or a feel no pain, like a 5-up feel no pain, dude, you are not living in melee against this guy. That dude, he is good. He's awesome in melee. How is he at taking hits? He's so bad. He's not very tough. He only has a 4-up invuln, which is not good for your Supreme Commander. You are investing a ton of points into this character, so it makes no sense that he would only have a 4-up invuln. For comparison, Guilliman, the only other Loyalist Primarch on the tabletop, has a 3-up invuln and has the ability to stand back up when he dies. That. Yeah.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So it's very not cool that the Lion didn't get it. I'm back. I'm cool. I'm not having an outburst of anger.
Another thing we are going to see changes with is going to be how your armies are composed. It seems like right now you get to pick your commander, and then you can get up to 6 battle line units, 1 of each datasheet, and then 3 of any other datasheet as well. So battle line units is going to be things like Orc Boys or Beast Snagga Boys in my case. So you can bring a ton of those. Initially, there was a little bit of worry among players like myself who play orcs. And one of the things we love to do is roll the green tide and just put as many models as possible on the board. And we were a little bit worried about this because we're like, I don't know, 3 of any datasheet doesn't really sound like a lot. But certain units are going to be classified as battle line units, and so you still will be able to get a ton of those. I would say most likely these are going to be like your Primaris Intercessors, your Fire Warriors if you play Tau, your Termagants if you're playing Tyranids. I think Termagants are like one of the standard troop choices. I don't remember. Everything's a Gaunt in the Tyranid army, and that always gets me. But, things like that, you're going to be able to take more of. Yeah, they all look exactly like, there were people who were like, oh, this is that model, this is that model in the preview trailers. And I'm like, they all look like bugs, like nothing. So that's going to be really good.
Sure. Asking for a friend, why is this one different?
I don't actually know. So we are going to see some new rules, or we will have to see how these rules play out with how like restricted you're going to be with HQ units, because I'm not entirely sure yet how that is going to work, but I have kind of an idea. But where it looks like right now, we're probably going to be able to run 2 named characters per army. Okay. And then one of them is going to be kind of like your high commander. But we'll get into that in a little bit as well.
I'm mostly a little confused. Like, so right now in Warhammer, we have like the different detachments. So we had like different detachments, like, gosh, what it was called, like a vanguard or a battalion or a combat patrol, all these different things. And then we moved to Arcs of Omen, which is basically one detachment type, and you basically could bring whatever you want with a specific focus on one. So is 10th edition kind of moving away from the Arcs of Omen format?
So that's actually a good point, and let's go into that right now. So the 10th edition is going to look more like Arcs of Omen than it's going to look like anything else. So mustering your army is broken down into about 6 different steps. The first step is selecting your battle size. So I think they're doing a really good job here at keeping everything really simple. So to start off, anything below 1,000 points is basically going to be automatically a combat patrol or a boarding action if you're playing that game mode, but those two are different. Whereas a boarding action, you can't run vehicles and you can't run monster characters. But combat patrol is going to be something that is below 1,000. But as we mentioned in the previous episode, it's going to essentially be, you're going to pit these box sets against each other, and there's not supposed to be any variation. Like, you're supposed to fight one box against the other. You assemble it, you paint it, you play it. That's like how it's meant to be. And so they're balancing the game that way as well. Then we get into 1,000 points and above. These are referred to as incursions. So if you're running anywhere between 1,000, above 1,000 points, but not to 2,000, that's an encourage. An incursion.
Doing me an encourage.
You're doing me an encourage. No, thanks, there is buddy. No encouragement in the 40,000 universe. It is only Grimdark, so keep that in mind. Then we've got your 2,000 points and above. That is your strike force. 3,000 points and above is your onslaught. I can't actually imagine running 3,000 points of my own army. We already played basically a 3,000 point match the other weekend, and it took way too long. So they have a format for it. It's ready to go. They know people like those big battles, but it takes so long. A quick note for this as well. Power level is gone.
Yep.
It is just points, because power level never really quite made it too much sense to me. I was like, why are we giving the same unit and the same model different quantities of value, and one of them is really important than the other one's like, yeah, it's just like, and it only mattered for like very specific objectives and abilities, which most armies didn't revolve around at all. So you're just kind of like, this doesn't really matter. So power level is going to go away. Again, they're simplifying. Simple is going to be better.
Yes.
Now we're on to step 2. Step 2 is start your army roster. This is just going to be the units that you're fielding. And now when you're playing Warhammer, this is considered to be a best practice if you're playing against somebody. And we do this a lot by sharing battle scribe sheets, is you share what your army is going to look like before you play. Again, it's just considered a best practice. It's a good show of sportsmanship, because you want to like know what you're fielding, and like you can kind of send that back and forth, because it's not just like, hey, surprise, I'm running all mechs and you just chose like a mob army, right? Because like one army is going to win over the other. You want to be able to kind of prepare your army in basically in preparation for that. Then you choose a faction. This could be Custodes, Chaos, Eldar. This part is mostly the same. These are going to be like the actual like units that you're putting onto the field. Now, starting your army roster, step 2, and step 3, which is choose your faction. These are going to kind of roll into each other. So like not a ton of variation there. When we get the rules, there's going to be a bigger and more detailed breakdown of what's happening in these steps. So keep that in mind here, guys. I'm trying to stay under a time limit today. The next step number 4, is select your detachment rules. Now, this is where everything is going to get a little bit simpler, and there's not going to be, I believe, as many variations in the rules, but it's also going to basically give you your specific set of stratagems, enhancements, and restrictions, and special abilities your units are going to be going with. So this is going to be a little bit different, and I'm still waiting to hear on more about this, because your detachment rules is going to essentially, in your case, would be like, hey, what chapter are you playing as? Are you playing as Ultramarines? Are you playing as Salamanders? Are you playing as Dark Angels? Like, whatever it might be, that's going to be falling under your detachment rules. I don't know how that's going to change. I really would like to know some more details about that, because I play Goths almost exclusively, because Goths are the hideous and the smackiest. So like, that's why I play them. So we'll see how those rules change. So but hard. That is step number 4. They hit so hard. I love it. Step number 5, you select your units. So here's where we're going to talk a little bit about where different characters are going to come in. So your first step in your selecting units is you must include one character. There has to be a named character or a ranked officer of some sort. Then you can include one of each named epic hero. That's going to be kind of a new tag for some of the units. Like, so for example, Gaz and Robert Gurleyman are both considered supreme commanders, so they have that tag attached to them. Then we're going to talk about, you can add up to 3 units of each data sheet. So let's go with your units. Most likely certain units that are like elites or things like that, like Terminators. Your Terminators, you're only going to be able to field 3 units of Terminators. I would be shocked if they're like, hey, that's a battle line unit, because then you could field up to 6 of them and I'd probably cry. Which gets us into our next part.
Well, hold on real quick. Just a real quick note. That is another thing why I think we're going to see larger squads of units. It's like, well, if I can only field 3, like I own 20 Terminators, so if my max squad size is 10, you better believe I'm going to be running 10 Thunderhammer wielding Terminators in that squad. I'm not going to break them up into 5, 10. 10 squads of each, of walking tanks laughing in their tactical dreadnought armor as they lumber towards the enemy, ready to break down the walls of the enemy. So,
absolutely. It's just going to make more tactical sense to run bigger squads. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, let me see. Where was I? So you can include up to 6 units of each battle line, or also dedicated transport. This means, so for example, this would be hilarious, is I could run 6 squads of boys and have 6 trucks, 1 for each squad of boys as well. Imagine the chaos of just 6 different trucks. Now, here's the problem, is each character, and remember how, guys, we said earlier, like that's where they're going to get most of like the abilities and stuff. One of the abilities, for example, for the orcs, that's very, very fun to play, is Truck Boys. Truck Boys gives them a ton of mobility to get out of the truck very, very quickly and start acting on objectives in the enemies. This might not even be available because most of those abilities are coming from attached characters, and these characters can only have one enhancement. And so some of those enhancements are also like relics and things like that. More to come on that. Again, we're just trying to go through all of this. These are not in full detail. I do highly recommend watching like Auspex Tactics videos, because he goes into each of these line items very, very clearly, distinctly, and with as much detail as we have available. So make sure you guys check that out as well. Honestly, with all of those, once you've done all of those different parts, I'm a huge fan of how simple this is, because the last step you do is like you promote your warlord. You take one of your characters and you're like, all right, that's my warlord. It's very self-explanatory.
Yep. So we spent about the last 5 to 10 minutes talking about forming an army. You might be a little confused. If you see this on paper, it is 6 steps. It's not hard. And one of them almost isn't a step. It's just pick start your army roster, which is equivalent to, I don't know, writing your name at the top of a piece of paper. Really, that's it. You're just creating a file in Battlescribe, or you're creating a file in Warhammer's roster builder, which I believe they're coming out.
Let's go into some of the new Tyranid units.
What is a Von Ryan's Leaper? I don't know what that means. Is that a
so
person?
I did actually have to. That Von Ryan's Leapers is the actual name of the unit. And this confused me for a very long time, but I had to rewatch the video several times, and Auspex Tactics covers it, and it is called Von Ryan's Leapers. But I just call them Leapers. Like, just call them Leapers.
Okie doke.
It's very strange. I put it in there for the technical accuracy of reporting it, but I was like, I don't like that. I don't want to put someone else's. That'd be like saying these are freaking, I don't know. I was trying to think of a name of an Inquisitor or something, but yeah, it's just like
Bob Saget.
Bob Saget's Ripper. Like, you're like, no, I don't like that.
Okay, if you're a big Warhammer nerd and you know exactly who or what a Von Ryan is, hit us up in the comments. School us. Bring us to class. Please and thank you. New Tyranid units. We're seeing Leapers. These are coming back to the tabletop after a long period of time. They are coming in a unit of 3, lots and lots of claws. More claws than what you're seeing on than other typical Tyranid units, so we like that. Similar in appearance to the Lictor. There's no data sheet for this unit yet, because it's probably just going to get a 10th edition sheet. Probably won't come in 9th. So we'll see it with the 10th. Probably in the launch box. Yes, I do see it in the list for the launch box. Let's start from the top. Winged Prime coming in the Tyranid launch box. The launch box is for 10th edition. Let's see how many times I could say launch box. In the Tyranid lunch box coming for 10th edition, which are the best prices for the starting factions, which in this case it'll be Space Marines, obviously, and Tyranids. You'll get a Winged Tyranid Prime, which is a very good unit. He flies over buildings and he rips things to shreds. So good. We are seeing a finally updated model for the Screamer Killer. If you saw the trailer, this was the guy that I think ripped a Terminator in half and then like vomited plasma onto his face. That is his ranged ability, is called Bioplasma. Don't know how that makes sense, but it's kind of cool. So that model hasn't been updated since like the 80s. Like, you see the model and you're like, that's weird. It's different, and I don't like it. We're also seeing 20 Gaunts, 2 to 6 Rippers, 3 Leapers. Like we said, it's coming in a unit of 3. 1 to 2 Feeder Beasts. These have like these cool little tentacle mouths. Or Tentacles if you're nasty.
Which all of our listeners, also, they nasty.
You nasty. Let's go. Let's go, baby. Shoot. Y'all loving them Tentacles. And it's also coming with a giant brain bug.
Fun stuff.
That's the stuff.
We've seen just a ton of new models showing up. This is not an exhaustive list yet. Hopefully it's not. I'm super excited to see even more new sculpts, new units. The whole lore about the Tyranid fleet coming in is that this fleet has new adaptations that the Imperium has not seen yet. So yeah, I'm like, let them ramp up that faction. Let's make Tyranids just absolutely dominate, because the Imperium is frankly getting crushed on all sides by the hive mind right now.
They are getting destroyed. Like, you probably saw it in the 10th edition trailer. If you saw that, Gilman is like, we are not winning.
They say we're winning, but they're lying. All the preachers say that victory has come. And then, like, you just see these Space Marines getting, like, torn to shreds. And so you're like, literally ripped. You're like, he's being really... He's using a very dark form of sarcasm right now. Like,
it's rough. Like, in other launch trailers, you're like, yeah, dude, the Imperium is like still going strong. And this one, you're like, dude, we're gonna die. We are gonna die.
Yeah,
this is not good.
So much so that the return of the Lion is like, cool. Now we have somebody to fight Angron and Abaddon and Vashtor, but like Guilliman is still going to have to fight the entire Tyranid hive fleet. Like, yeah, you got one Primarch for each of those issues right now. And I'm like, how are people going to survive? Things need to happen. Like, I think 10th edition is going to be like, it's going to be bonkers for the lore scene of Warhammer. I'm really excited. I kind of want to start getting my hands on some of those books even. Like, man, I want to get some of those.
Dude, if the Arcs of Omen books weren't like $60 a pop,
they're so expensive.
I would have them on my bookcase behind me. Dude, yeah, the Black Library is such a racket. I love their books. They're some of my favorite books to read of all time. I have a lot of them on audiobook. What a racket. And I'm in part of the King County Library system here in Washington. There's no Warhammer audiobooks.
No, they're almost exclusively, if not completely exclusively, on, is it Audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which pairs with, I think that's like Amazon's version, but they have access to Black Library novels, or you might be able to get them if you're subscribed to Warhammer Plus. Don't quote me on that, but that would make sense if you have access to it.
That would make Warhammer Plus worth it. If I had access to the entire Black Library.
That actually would be pretty cool. We would like 50% of the cut if that needs to be implemented, Game Workshop. Thank you so much. I will give you my address in the description of this video.
But we're not signing any NDAs. Too many content creators have gotten taken down because they sign a Games Workshop NDA and then they get screwed. Boy, howdy, does Games Workshop have a bad relationship with content creators. But that's not why we're here. We're going to talk about how Games Workshop screwed me in particular by nerfing the Deathwing. They just released a new balanced data slate. Perfect transition. They just released a new balanced data slate, and they took away the ability for the first company, Deathwing specifically, to not be able to be wounded on anything but a 4 or higher. This means even if something has a super high strength and can wound on a 2 or a 3, doesn't matter. You can only wound on a 4. That's a significant buff in defense. They're like, nah, dude, you don't get that anymore. And it's like, why? Why would you do that?
I mean, it sort of makes sense. If I'm shooting at you with a Tau railgun, I expect to wound on a 2.
Okay, here's the thing about the Tau railgun. Now that you brought it up, actually, no. I am going to control myself because it is 2 bullet points down, and I have the ability to not just go on a tangent every time you mention something that gets me so angry. Here's the thing. Terminators are going to be going up to toughness 5 in 10th edition, and maybe in 10th edition, probably in 10th edition. I hope that the entire Deathwing gets a rework, because having a Primarch now, like, things are different. Like, I understand that having the Lion with permanent transhuman physiology might be a little broken. But maybe. I do want it. I do want it. Again, if I'm going to drop 300 points on a model, I don't want him to die. There was one game I played against one of my buddies. He fields Necrons. We were playing on Tabletop Simulator, so we could pick whatever units we want. He picked the Silent King and as his, like, Lord of War, and he put it, like, behind a building, but not completely behind a building, such that, like, I could still target him. Well, I went first in this turn. So what I did is I took a Ravenwing land speeder, zoomed around the battlefield, like, advanced him, used stratagem to basically put a laser pointer on his Silent King, so all my characters did extra damage to him. And then I rolled an Astraeus tank around the corner, which is still the strongest Space Marine unit you can field in the game. It's a Forge World unit. It'll cost you about $500 to buy. And I killed him turn 1 before he even got to do anything. I ended up losing that game still because I put all my points in one basket and couldn't control any of the other objectives, but it felt really good to Alpha Strike that thing. Let me tell you what. But that's the thing. It's like, you want your expensive units not to die. Terminators are pretty expensive. They're 34 points a model, which is a lot. That's a lot. And they're kind of easy to kill. Feels bad. it's a feels bad man moment. They're supposed to be really strong. They don't feel strong. You're probably going to hear that a lot out of me. I'm kind of salty about it. But we're going to move on to some strength and toughness updates. Hold on, press the button. Moving on to some strength and toughness updates. In 10th edition, we are going to see a wider array of toughness and strength values. So right now, the values are between 1 and 8 for toughness. That is going up by a lot. So the toughness 1 is like the bottom of the bottom. Like if you're fielding a bunch of newborn infants, toughness 1. I don't know why you would do that. Don't do that. It's probably not a good idea. Unless they're like explosive. Or no, we're not going to talk about explosive babies. Toughness 1. Toughness 1. Can you focus, please? Focus. Toughness 1, explosive babies over here. And then like all of tanks and stuff are going way higher. Like toughness 12, toughness 13, toughness 14. You're like, okay, so it's going to be a lot more difficult to literally walk up to a tank with a thunder hammer, which strong hammer, sure, but it's still only a hammer. It's not Mjolnir. It's just a hammer with an electrical current going through it. You can't kill these tanks probably with hammers anymore, which is like, that's fair. That's fair.
It makes sense.
We're also seeing insane increases in certain weapons, like the freaking Tau railgun is rumored to have a strength 20 railgun. This thing is notorious for being able to kill anything it looks at. This is not changing. So, word to the wise. If you're playing a Tau player and he is running a hammerhead gunship with a railgun on it, kill it first.
Kill it as soon as possible.
That thing could murder a building. It probably could. Actually, I think if you rolled up with a Titan, you would have trouble beating a strength 20 weapon. Also, really excited to see how strong the Titans are going to be.
Ooh, oh my.
I definitely had a dream last night that I got my hands on a Reaver Titan. And I won. I was like, yeah, I finally won. And I woke up.
What an erotic dream.
Like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I finally won. Pay to win, baby.
Yeah, for sure.
For those of you who don't know, Titans are larger than human children. They're supposed to still go on your table. And I think the cheapest one you can buy is $1,200, $1,200 US, 1200 plus tax. So really, that's $1,320 if you're assuming a 10% sales tax. It's a lot of money.
That's bonkers.
That is rent money that you are not spending on rent, because who can afford a house?
Welcome back to the land of the living.
Dude, I nearly lost my dinner. That was nasty. The smell, I was just like, oh. Like Sarah put a mask over my, you saw it, like Sarah put a mask over my face, and I would have vomited onto the pile of dog vomit.
I heard you like go like, oh, Sarah's calling me, I'm going to go out really quick. And then I heard you go, oh no. And I immediately pulled out my phone and I was like, I'm going to play games. He's going to be a while.
He's going to be a minute. Oh my gosh.
So sorry everyone for all of the dog update or dog go. We've had so many delays from dog related noises and other bodily functions. So thanks for sticking with us here, guys. Andrew, last time you finished off, you were going over some strength and toughness updates, specifically with the Melta gun. Go ahead and pick up where you left off and then get into some of your predictions.
Yeah, I think I remember where I am. I still have, I think the hairs in my nose got burnt. Like they just kind of, I'm not going to describe it because I don't know how queasy people are at all. That was bad. It was bad. Everything's better now. We'll keep it. So I think I was describing the differences between the old Melta profile and the new Melta profile. And this is an example. It seems like they're going to be doing a lot of this. For example, a Meltagun current state has it's a Meltagun, and it does a ton of damage. Strength a ton, AP minus a bajillion, and then the damage characteristic is really what we're going to talk about. So the old Melta damage characteristic is D6 plus 2. So you roll a D6 dice, and then you add 2 to it. So the minimum is 3, the maximum is 8. 8's a lot of damage. That
Eight's a lot of damage.
Things. They're not nerfing it. They're keeping it the same, but they're just writing it in a different way. It's like new math. Well, I don't know new math because I learned old math. What they're writing now is the weapon, it's now Melta is its classification and not just its name. So it'll be a Melta rifle with the Melta and a number next to it. So this one is, for example, Melta 2, which means it does a flat 2 damage regardless of the D6 damage that is listed in its list. I don't know if that's simpler or not.
I feel like that's not simpler. Because Melta 2 makes it seem like it does a minimum of 2 damage when it actually does a minimum of 3 damage.
Minimum of 3. Because it's still D6 plus 2. You're just not putting all of the math in one place. So I don't think I'm a fan of this. That seems more complicated. And like, I have friends who are like, I've had a couple friends in the last year saying, I want to get into Warhammer. Can you teach me? And I'm just like, this is like my birthday. It's so great. And this kind of stuff kind of is discouraging. I'm like, and now I'm telling these people, I was like, maybe just wait till the new edition comes out so you don't have to relearn stuff. Just
potentially, yeah.
Learn it right the first time, I guess. And then once 11th edition comes out, just hope that the world is ended by then. I don't know. But the strength for the Meltagun is also going up to 9.
Nice.
So this, which is cool, but with vehicles being so much tougher, Meltaguns aren't vehicle killers anymore. It doesn't seem like it, which is a problem because that's what a Meltagun is supposed to do. So this became, instead of a vehicle killer, it is probably an elite or a character killer, which is still good. But like right now in Warhammer, the problem is that anything with a high AP value is just being used on everything because the range of strength and toughnesses were so tight together, you couldn't really have a lot of diversity without something becoming very quickly overpowered. Because like the difference between strength 7 and strength 8, gigantic. That is a huge, huge difference in current Warhammer. Now, strength 7 and strength 8 is a much more subtle difference. It's a little bit better instead of being nothing can kill this better. So, we'll see. Also, like I've said probably about 1 million times, Terminators are now going to be toughness 5. In my notes, I wrote toughness 4. That is their current state. They're now toughness 5.
Which signifies a little bit of significance because not only should they also be tougher, but things like a Melta, if the Meltagun is strength 9, it doesn't wound on a 2, it wounds on a 3. So that difference in 1 toughness of now being toughness
4. No.
Wounds on a 3.
Against a toughness
5. Strength 9 against toughness 5.
Yep, you're right. Okay, cool. Yep.
So whereas if the Terminators were still toughness 4, then you'd be wounding on a 2, which would be like, hey, my squad of Hellblasters is going to literally eradicate all of your Thunder Boys. So,
well, that's why they're called Eradicator squads, because they have Melta.
Yeah, that is true. Hit us with your predictions.
Okay, we're going to talk about predictions. As you can probably surmise, 10th edition will be very different from 9th edition. Games Workshop is looking to make the game easier to understand for new players while still allowing experienced veterans to flex their tactical muscles. Full faction, like we're going to see full faction and sub-faction reworks. We'll probably see more and more Primarchs. I'm guessing Vashtor will ascend to godhood and actually lead a Dark Mechanicum army, I think we are going to see the introduction of a new army in 10th edition led by Vashdor. At this point, the Lion Arcs of Omen book has not been released, but I'm starting to hear rumors. I don't know if Vashdor lives or dies. I have no idea. We're going to see finally a 10th edition datasheet for Rebooty Girly Man, because he has to have a new datasheet at this point. They're changing the fundamentals of the datasheet, so everyone's getting a new one. Really what I'm trying to describe is 8th edition and 9th edition had the same format for their datasheet. They are changing the datasheet format in 10th, so you can't you can't play with an 8th edition datasheet in 9th. 9th edition, 8th edition, they don't work in 10th. They just don't. Old sculpts are going to get refreshed. We're seeing this with the Screamer Killer, Drukari, or the Dark Eldar. They are notorious for having super old sculpts. Hopefully they get a range refresh, because Space Marines have gotten one like 10 times over at this point. Rumor is that Primaris and Firstborn, so the tall Space Marines and the shorter ones, that's not going to be a thing anymore. There's not going to be a Primaris keyword on Space Marine datasheets. You're just going to have Space Marines again.
Yeah, I'm going to go in and say that this would assume that all Space Marines are now going to be running with the same rule set. My kind of add-on to this is kind of a little bit of speculation, is I wonder if we're far enough away from the introduction of the Primaris concept when Belisarius Cawl was like, hey, do you guys like new Marines? And now we're far enough away from that where honestly, like the Firstborns are either all dead or upgraded by this point. So I'm kind of assuming that's where the lore is leading us.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely where they're going now, because it doesn't make sense to not have any. It's like it doesn't make sense to run Firstborn units, like they suck, in my opinion. You probably at this point can still run tactical squads, which is what Firstborn Marines are. You can probably still run tactical squads, but they'll probably just have the same data sheet. So essentially, that is a buff to your old Space Marine units. If you were an old Space Marine player before the Primaris reboot, I hope you kept your stuff, because it seems like it's going to get a buff. That's my guess.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's dive into some lore for the 10th edition to finish out today. So we've got these bullet pointed, but we're going to be breaking this down and probably more videos to come as well. So please, this is, again, your obligatory reminder to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, because that's where all of our non-podcast content is going to go. So you're going to find much more lore content over there. So one of the biggest changes in 10th edition is the Lion is returning to the universe. He's awoken from his slumber and he is ready to wreak havoc on the forces of chaos. Vashdor, who we've already mentioned several times, is currently in the status of a demigod. He has entered the fray and allied himself with Abaddon the Despoiler. Vashdor seeks godhood, while Abaddon seeks to gain a new weapon, kind of weapons of mass destruction sort of a thing. They search for these relics to complete their ascension and their tasks, and the Space Marines are currently trying to work against them. And we're going to hopefully see the Lion take a big role in combating this. We even see Vashdor make an assault on the Golden Throne. I believe that's in there. I can't quite remember. I was writing notes down like a frantic maniac, so there's fun stuff like that. We've also seen Angron absolutely just turn an entire sector of the galaxy to blood, getting millions of followers for Khorne through his blood curse. An entire Indominus fleet now operates for the Blood God. Like, just he's doing great. He's killing it. At his 10-year Primarch reunion, he's going to be like one that's standing far above the rest. Then we see that war is basically raging around every single part of the galaxy. There is no peace. There is only war. Then the eyes of the Ultramarines are now turning towards the Segmentum Pacificus. This is in the galactic west when you're looking at Terra as the center. An enormous Tyranid high fleet is striking at the galaxy. Even the Lord Solar leads his forces into the Segmentum Pacificus, directly to the west, again, of Segmentum Solar, Terra, the Golden Throne. There is the prevailing thought among the forces of the Imperium of this far and no farther. Nobody will get past us. We are going to take the fight to the Tyranids. We are going to fight and scrap and bleed all over the Segmentum Pacificus. They will not reach the Golden Throne. That is what the Imperium is operating under. However, the hive mind moves in to consume the galaxy. It throws greater numbers and even newer adaptations never before seen at the forces of mankind. With battles still raging against Hive fleets Moloch, Jormungandr, Gorgon, Behemoth, Kraken, Hydra, and Leviathan, the jaws of the beast come closer and closer to closing with every battle against the forces of mankind.
Goosebumps. It's dope. And I'm here for it.
People are going to die. It's going to be great.
Everyone's going to die.
It's been a long one here, guys. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with us. We're going to be posting more Warhammer news in more episodes we go through. We usually go through like our episode reviews or our main topic. We follow up with news from the HoloNet or really news from what's like the Imperium equivalent to the HoloNet? I'm not entirely sure.
Vox casting.
It would be like, yeah, it'd be like the VoxNet or something like that.
What's the beacon that the Emperor puts off?
The Astronomicon?
Yeah. News from the Astronomicon or the Astropathic choirs.
They singing. But basically, we're going to go over more of those updates in future episodes as well. So make sure you guys subscribe. Usually we do our news right at the end. So thank you guys so much for watching here. We love every single one of you. You are all handsome. You are all beautiful. Make sure to leave your theories in the comments. Share pictures of your Warhammer models with us on Twitter and Instagram. Tag us in those comments. We'd love to share those on our page and do little highlights for the stuff that you guys are building. You guys are some incredible artists and we want to see more from you. If you have questions for the podcast and would like them to be featured on air, be sure to send us an email at talkabouttatooine@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe so that way this video gets shared into the into the feeds of everyone else here, guys. We'd really love to see more and more people enjoy this content and really come to bring more people into those hobbies as well. Until next time, the Emperor protects.
Close your eyes.